can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Open Wide for Some Soccer Quarterly. My name is Seth Vertelny. Alongside me, Pablo Maurer, Thomas Floyd. Guys, we're back. Again, welcome back. There's been a few times recently where we've done these episodes and had to say, welcome back. What's happened since the last time we've done this episode?
But what has happened since our last episode?
I mean, so many things.
It was on our last episode was on October 24th.
So
2017.
My suggestion was to start with the MLS knockout rounds. I have a lot of thoughts on the matchup between Houston Dynamo and Sporting Kansas City that went to extra time as the Dynamo moved on against Sporting KC side, missing Tim Melia in goal. There's a lot of drama there.
This is not, by no stretch of the imagination, this is the most depressing gap, because there was one where we took off like 3 months around the election and we came back and Donald Trump was president.
Yeah.
So really nothing that's happened in the past 5 months, Jesus Christ, could compare.
I think the last time we did this show, Donald Trump had an entirely different cabinet.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. You say nothing would compare. There have been some pretty horrific things that have happened in our country since then.
Let's talk about it. What are the horrific things?
Oh, I mean,
are we going right into the school shooting segment, Thomas?
I wasn't gonna directly bring that up.
Anyways, guys, we're taking your calls as always. 708-LTOW-FSS. I don't know if we have any voicemails. I'll check momentarily, but call us. Talk about the CCL game you're watching on Go90, probably. MLS, U.S. national team. What else?
I'm sure all of you have the Go90 app already downloaded, since you can watch every NWSL game for free on that app.
Turns out we're sponsored by Go90, apparently.
I mean, if we were sponsored, it would probably give us motivation to do the show more often. So maybe that's what we need to give us a little kick to do this show more than once every 5 months.
We were sponsored briefly by Tonic, the restaurant, the bar my girlfriend was a manager at. That's how we got those tickets to give away, and I don't think it made us care about the podcast in any way.
Can we get Ted's Bolton to sponsor us then?
That's an interesting idea.
Okay,
yeah, more people like that place. So
for the record,
by the way, by the quick side note, Ted's Bulletin,
which is where Pablo's girlfriend works.
Yeah, on 14th Street. It's turned into this weird like magnet for conservative personalities. Like Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner eat there all the time.
I have heard that.
Scott Pruitt eats there all the time.
What?
It's the strangest thing, yeah. And then also like the Obama girls, both of them eat there frequently.
They are opening a Ted's Bulletin in Ballston, like 2 blocks from my apartment.
Oh, it's
pretty
often popping in Ballston.
We're also getting a bar taco.
Taco?
It's a bar where they have tacos. It's pretty cool.
I didn't know that was a place that existed.
Came up short on the name front, I guess. It's a bar. We got tacos. I'm going to call it Bar Taco.
Well, guys, I think we're going to try to do the show more often. Otherwise, we are going to have to continue calling the show Open Wide for Some Soccer Quarterly, and I don't want to have to do that. So the MLS season has started again. We've had an entire offseason and playoffs since the last time we did the show. So let's get into the MLS.
Let's get right into calling it the MLS.
No. I was grammatically correct there. I said let's get into the MLS, like the MLS conversation. Do you see what I'm saying?
God, we have really lost any sort of semblance of chemistry that we had.
I feel like
we look like like appropriately enough, we look like an early season MLS side, still getting to know each other, playing some horrible fucking soccer. You know. Speaking of which, why don't we talk about DC United right off the bat? We all watched the game. I watched them struggle in the second half. a man up, which is something I feel like that actually happens more frequently than you'd imagine in soccer globally anyways. But, Thomas, what did you think?
I thought
Thomas, you're the only one who actually watched the game, so what did you think?
I thought the first half was encouraging. There was crisp passing. There was good movement off the ball. Thought Yamil Assad was pretty sharp, both in terms of his ability to create from the flank and his set-piece service, which obviously led to the opening goal for DC. Darren Maddox was, fairly mobile up front, missed a penalty, so that was a little bit of a blemish on his resume from the match. But there was a lot to like. Frederick Briand turned in a steady performance in central defense alongside Steve Birnbaum. O'Neal Fisher held his own at left back. Junior Moreno and Segura, so were pretty solid as well. There was a lot to like, at least over those first 45 minutes, and then DC entered halftime up a goal, up a man, and proceeded to spend the entire second half pinned back as if they were the team down a man, and I think that's where things get a little more discouraging.
Yeah, there was really a lack of composure. Even if it was 11v11, that would be the kind of situation where DC United would want to try to keep the ball a little bit to try to put the game away as the second half wore on. And instead, you saw DC United kind of revert into a defensive shell. And whenever they got the ball, it seemed like they couldn't string more than 2 or 3 passes together. I'm not sure why, because they had essentially the same personnel out there. I think one difference in the second half was that Justin Merrim's influence on the game kind of grew from where he was in the first half to the point where he was just kind of dominating, and you could tell that DC United was scared of what he was going to do every time he got the ball. And I think that on that left side, he was kind of terrorizing Nick De Leon, and De Leon wasn't getting enough help over there, and it just kind of all deteriorated, and eventually Orlando City scored. I mean, DC United was still really close to getting out of there with a win, but clearly Orlando City's equalizer was more than deserved.
And to briefly talk about Orlando for a moment here, this was a team that was missing Sasha Kleshchin, missing Dom Dwyer, missing Yuri Rosell, missing their new DP, Josue Coleman, missing their new center back, Sane. They were incredibly shorthanded. Justin Murilli was the only big offseason signing from this completely revamped team who was on the field. And they still managed to get a draw while down a man for 50-some minutes. So if I'm an Orlando fan, I'm pretty encouraged about how this team performed against DC, and I think as we look toward the rest of the MLS season, Orlando's a team that we're gonna want to keep an eye on as potentially becoming a contender in the East.
I would like sort of put this out there too. I think if you're DC United and you're going into that game without Lucho Costa suspended, without Ben Olsen suspended, and you're playing an Orlando side you haven't beaten in 4 games, you've never won there, I think you'd take a 1-1 draw if that was offered to you.
They did win once in Orlando.
Really?
But it was at the old stadium. I don't know if you...
The Citrus Bowl.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Camping World Stadium.
Yes.
They have lost 4 in a row to them, I believe, though, right? Or had before this game.
They lost their meetings last year, for sure.
I mean, again, I think you take that result. Obviously, given the way the game played out, it's a disappointing result because you'd think anytime you have a lead and you have a man advantage, you're gonna get 3 points. But by no stretch of the imagination to me is it a bad result for either team, really.
I think it'll be interesting to see what we think of this result in a month or 2 or 3, because this is a team that is playing 12 of 14 games on the road to start the season. The 2 home games are at temporary venues where it's not really a familiar facility, and I'm not sure if they're going to have your full normal home field advantage. And I think they just need every point they can get. And if DC is struggling to get points on the road around May and June, and they're getting to the point where they're getting ready to enter the new stadium in July, but really far down the standings because of this brutal road trip to start the season, they might look back on this opener with more regret than positivity, because it really, obviously it's a point gained on the road, but it's also very much 2 points lost in the situation where they should have emerged with 3.
Yeah, definitely at some point in this opening stretch, they're going to have to get some wins on the road, because even though most MLS teams don't win a lot of their games on the road, the way it's set up is unfortunate, where they're going to have to put together a long winning streak at home in the back end of the season unless they're able to get some wins on the road, because they're just going to look at the standings and be so far behind, which is kind of an unfortunate quirk of the schedule, but that's just kind of the way it is. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the newcomers. United, as you would expect for a team that didn't have a very successful 2017, brought in a lot of new faces, and we saw a lot of them. Thomas, and you touched on a couple of the names. David Ostad in goal, Brillant, the new starting center back, Segura, Moreno in midfield, a little farther up the field, Assad and Maddox. And what were our impressions on some of the newcomers? Who were the ones that impressed you? Who were the ones that you thought maybe could have done a little better? I
was impressed by Brillant, as I mentioned earlier. Just in central defense, he's a guy who, when he was on NYCFC, he was sort of this stuck in between being a number 2 center back and number 3 center back. Like, he was too good to be a backup, but when he was a starter, you kind of got the sense that they could use an upgrade at the position.
Also, I think generally that's how Vieira plays lineup-wise in general. I mean, it keeps people on their toes and rotates people in and out. But I always liked him.
Yeah, and I always thought he was like pretty steady for them, but nothing spectacular. But in this first game for DC, I thought he was very impressive. In fact, it was a performance where he stood out as an individual more than any NYCFC game I happened to catch over the past couple seasons. And I think that's pretty encouraging for DC. And all signs from camp, talking to players and coaches and such, seem to indicate that he's made an impression and that he's very much going to be a reliable presence in the back and a leader. So that's encouraging for DC. Assad was very effective on the left flank, and I think his set-piece service is something people didn't really talk about when they signed him, but he's going to be a really influential player on that side. In terms of the guys who were more middle of the road, I thought Moreno and Segura were fine. I think Moreno could probably use a position higher up the field. Right now he's in the deep lying role because Russell Canals is injured, but maybe you move him higher up the field once Canals is back. And then Maddox had flashes, as I was talking about earlier, showing the mobility and athleticism, but he needs to finish. He had the penalty that was not terrible, but not struck particularly well either, and the breakaway in the second half where I think he maybe got the timing wrong on that just a little bit.
One too many touches.
Yeah.
I do also think you talked about Assad. I mean, one of my biggest questions going forward this year is honestly, when they picked him up, I thought, well, it's a player obviously a lot of people, including myself, enjoyed watching Atlanta, but how will he do when he's not surrounded by 2, 3, 4 incredible playmakers, people to combine with? But I do I'm sort of quasi salivating at the idea of watching him combine with Acosta when he gets back from suspension. I think they're both super dynamic, great on the ball. So I think there's possibly a reason for excitement there.
Yeah, I like Assad. I don't think he's going to post the 7 and 13 numbers he did last season as a part of that juggernaut.
Nobody does for DC United, so it's fine.
Right. But if he's a guy who can give them 5 and 8, that's pretty good. That would make him their leading scorer and leading assist man from last season's team. So the bar in terms of attacking productivity isn't as high as it was in Atlanta, and I think he's someone who, if he can just make them a little more dynamic going forward and combine with guys like Acosta and Stieber and whoever's in that central midfield once the position gets settled, That's really all DC wants out of that role.
Definitely a good game, too, for Chris Durkin to get his feet wet, I guess. Up a man, not a ton of pressure. Durkin, obviously, there have been rumors, I guess, swirling for the past month or so that Benfica, I guess, has made an offer, is preparing to make an offer. I'm always, fascinated by this. I'm always fascinated that consistently they're, big-name European clubs making sizable offers for players that don't even crack the 18 or 11 in MLS. And I what do you even make of that with Durkin? I mean, obviously he's shown a lot of promise at the youth national team level, and I think there's a difference. Obviously, he can play for a reserve side in Europe and get a lot of experience instead of just playing for Richmond or riding the bench at DC. But I was a little shocked to see that a club like that is interested in him.
Yeah, I think it is all about the performance on the youth national team level. At the U17 World Cup this past fall, he was considered one of the standout performers for the U.S. team, and I think that's really all it takes. These clubs aren't sending scouts to every MLS match. They're sending scouts to the U17 World Cup and trying to figure out which players are potentially promising investments. So he's someone who, I was trying to think of what DC should do with that. Do you just, take the allocation money and the transfer fee that comes with, selling a player who hasn't been a factor in the first team thus far, or do you try to just keep him in the squad and develop him, and then if he really becomes an MLS standout, maybe you can sell him for even more in a couple years after getting some quality on the field out of him? There are some different directions this could go in.
Yeah, I mean, at least they would get a transfer fee for him at this point, because that has been a big issue over the past few years in MLS, is European teams coming and poaching these kids out of the academies for free.
Right.
Just happened again today.
Yeah, and also even someone like Eric Palmer Brown, who signs as a homegrown, plays a couple years, gets some matches here and there, but never becomes a regular, and then leaves for free.
Yeah, so if DC United got $1 million or $2 million for Durkin right now, I think that a section of the fan base would certainly be upset, and I could see why. But you could almost say job done,
right.
They developed him, they got him to be multi-million-dollar player, and they sold him, even though he's played 15 minutes in the MLS.
Especially, let's be realistic about this, given Ben's track record of not playing guys like him. I mean, what all the stuff you said is just true, but I think there's probably a bigger chance that he just sort of withers away, and then they don't end up getting a lot of money for him.
Well, right, that's the risk that you take by not selling him now if there's an offer.
What if, in 3 years, he's Connor Shinosky?
Yeah.
Sorry, Connor Shinosky.
If you're listening, he follows me on Twitter, did you?
Oh, sorry.
Seth, you were out of cherry soda, so I'm actually drinking now Kirkland Canadian whiskey and cherry Pedialyte.
Oh my God!
your refrigerator.
Dude,
I don't know.
There's still cherry soda in the can.
I thought it was in the refrigerator. I didn't see that. That might add some nice carbonation though to my Pedialyte.
I do like the whiskey and Pedialyte combination, because you're preemptively trying to prevent the hangover that may come from the whiskey.
That's the hangover hack, man. Is I've been doing that since probably high school.
Yeah, man.
I mean, fuck Gatorade. Pedialyte. You have one Pedialyte before you go to bed and a couple of aspirins. You don't even feel the crushing sadness that makes you drink all the time.
I constantly have Pedialyte in my fridge. I never go without it.
Yeah, two questions from the audience real quick here. One, a general question: is there a more enigmatic player in American soccer than Darlington Nagbe? And another, any expert analysis, he doesn't say this, but Thomas, on CONCACAF Nations League qualifications?
I haven't looked at the
we all read the press release.
I haven't looked at it in excruciating detail. I am surprised that the bigger teams, including the U.S., aren't beginning play until 2019.
Yeah, after the Gold Cup.
Yeah, so I mean that is actually very surprising to me, because I thought the whole point of this tournament was to kind of fill this gap in the schedule where in between the end of one World Cup and the start of qualifying for the next, you just have a million friendlies that get a bit tiresome. And now those are back on the schedule, and all the European teams are occupied with the European Nations League, which is playing. So you're limited in the pool of opponents you can have for those friendlies. So looking forward to U.S. New Zealand in September.
Also, it means that now it's officially going to be a full 18 months until there's an opportunity to cap tie any dual
Right.
nationals. So looking forward to the Jonathan Gonzalez situation repeating itself many times between now and next summer.
Right.
Can we? I guess we're shifting to general MS anyways. We have another question from the audience, and actually, Thomas, I saw you tweet something the other day about this, and I was a little surprised. You're a full-on VAR apologist, right? You like it. You think it's working well. I think your tweet said something like, "See, folks, that's the beauty of VAR. It worked."
That
And
does sound like me.
Well,
exactly.
It must have been
You were
the
totally
Sporting KC
standing
game,
for
right?
VAR,
Yeah.
and I
It
just
actually-
like you and I are on totally different sides of this. I actually was super pro VAR initially, and even last year hung on with it, but like I just genuinely think that in this past week and then several weeks, the last few weeks of last season, excuse me, I saw like 4 or 5 calls that they just objectively got wrong.
Was there a particular
Defend
question?
yourself is what I'm saying.
So I think.
I mean, yeah, the question from the audience was VAR still sucks. Fix this shit. So,
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, not quite a question, but
Yeah.
I'll take this. The play I was tweeting about was actually the LAFC game where Carlos Vela appeared to have a clear penalty, not only missed, but then not reviewed by VAR. And my, sort of, I won't even call it defense, but my explanation of what happened is it appeared that the contact happened just outside the box. And when that happens, it's not a reviewable
okay.
play because it's not one of the 4 categories.
So that was your justification for why VAR works? Because
Whoa, I wasn't saying, look at this, VAR works. I was just saying, essentially, calm down and, don't blame VAR for this one. Blame the referee for missing the call, and then the VAR system was used properly and not being
I mean,
used.
look,
How did
we don't
the
need to like. I'm not going to ramble on about this because obviously it's like this is an evergreen argument, but I just don't. The idea that it's left up to the person who made the call to admit their error and reverse the call it's like inherently flawed. I mean, it should just be like hockey or most other, a lot of other sports where it's just an independent person or it goes to a person in another city even, and they make the call.
It's that happens a bit for the objective calls. If it's offside or out of bounds or something that doesn't require judgment, the referee sometimes will just get the advice of the VAR and make the call without reviewing the play. But you're right, if it's a penalty or a goal or some sort of play where the referee needs to review it himself, that aspect, at least from the MLS perspective, actually did come from the players largely. They made a request when they were formulating the process for VAR that the referee on the field had the final say because they felt that consistency was important and they were worried that the VAR system would eliminate that consistency by having a guy in the booth. So, I mean, I'm just explaining the thought process behind that.
Yeah,
like that's... that was something that came from the players, and it's an attempt for the VAR system to accommodate what the players want. Big picture, I think the system has issues. Communication is an obvious one, and I think the Vela play I was talking about earlier is an example of that because it shouldn't require a random obscure journalist tweeting about it to make what happened clear to fans. It should be clear to the people in the stands. It should be clear to the people watching the broadcast because if you're watching the broadcast, Taylor Twellman was flummoxed by the call and didn't understand why the VAR wasn't used. And
then they missed him. It's supposedly an automatic yellow if you
Yeah,
if you make the
they
VAR
did-
signal,
that
which is
is
like
a
the
thing,
most
yeah.
pimp move ever. And I think I'm just gonna start doing that, like in life in general. Like somebody's gonna be like, oh, I really think we should just be friends, and I'm just gonna be like,
that That was pretty good. I did like that Vela did the signal, but players have been told it's an automatic yellow. Maybe there's a little bit of a grace period.
What I want to know on the Vela play is who made the determination that the foul / non-foul occurred outside of the box since
Yeah.
the referee didn't call it.
Right. I will address that momentarily.
Okay.
All right, let's see here. Come on. All right, 951, you're on Open Wide for some soccer. How can we help you?
Well, since I last listened to the correlated episode, I thought I was at my lowest soccer point. But
Okay.
this year I decided to play MLS Fantasy, so I'm kind of questioning that.
How
so do you guys have any
how poorly did you do?
I mean, I got third, but like half my league didn't set a roster, so I don't even know if I'm doing all right or not doing all right. But just kind of general question, like, what's your opinion on MLS Fantasy? Is it like a worth it kind of thing for the league, or does it even capture the game in a good light? And then kind of for what?
Yeah, you
No,
know,
go ahead.
I played the past few years. I don't have a team this year, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I generally, I guess, feel the same way about all fantasy sports. You know, it's just like a fun distraction. I guess I don't have. Maybe one of you guys has an opinion on
Well, I
whether it's
think-
an accurate representation of the league.
Well,
you know?
I don't know if it's an accurate representation. So
I mean, I can tell you it's not
Full-
accurate because I don't think I don't know. Like Travis Wara is worth $4.5 million.
So,
But, you know.
full disclosure, I was in an MLS Fantasy League, and I think I played for like a week before I gave up.
That's what we all
But-
do.
but I
By the
will
way,
s-
my greatest moment is there was one year last year where I set my lineup the first week and did not change it the entire year, and I beat Ivis, I beat Franco, and like multiple weeks I beat Thomas Floyd.
Yeah,
I
think
did not have a team last year, but this may have been 2 years
All right,
ago.
all right.
But
Yeah,
I think the thing with MLS Fantasy and with any other fantasy league is that it gets people to pay attention to the league that maybe otherwise wouldn't be, and gets people to know the players and know the teams who maybe otherwise wouldn't know the players or teams in the same way that playing FIFA would, and maybe it acts as like a gateway to know more about MLS. So
And
I don't
it's-
see how it can hurt.
I will definitely say that, like, and this I'm saying this as somebody who watches a lot of MLS for work and for air quotes pleasure, but it did, like, when I played it, it got me to be interested in a lot of games that I normally, I mean, it's a Wednesday night, 10:30 p.m. Houston versus San Jose. Normally I'd be putting a gun in my mouth or something like that watching that game, but I don't know, like
Dude, it's Chris Wondolowski against Leonardo.
Could there be any more like underwhelming player to be closing in on the all-time MLS goal scoring record? Anyways, I appreciate the call, and also I appreciate you acknowledging that you playing MLS Fantasy is like the saddest moment of your life. If it's a consolation,
Well,
you have a pretty good
life.
life. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right, see you. First ever MLS Fantasy call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nice
So
not
the-
to work for the league anymore because last year I would have been like MLS Fantasy sponsored by Castrol. It's
Oh
great.
yeah,
And,
Pablo, you were always so restrained during your time at MLS Soccer.
yeah, exactly.
You really held back.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question before the call was, who made the determination that Vela was outside of the box since the referee did not blow his whistle?
So I am just operating on my assumption of how the system works.
Uh-huh.
I think what happened is the VAR checked that play because it's, anytime there's anything that could possibly be one of the 4 game-changing incidents that are reviewable, they do a check, which is behind the scenes. You don't know what's happening. And when the VAR did the check, he just looked at it and said, okay, forget whether this is a foul or not. I see contact outside the box. So what we are reviewing is not a potential penalty. We're reviewing a potential free kick, which is not one of the 4 game-changing decisions, and therefore I'm not going to signal for a review to happen. Because
Did you notice how it's interesting to watch different refs? Like, did you notice how little Geiger? I mean, like he was at the monitor for like 2 to 3 seconds.
This is the
Right.
Sporting KC NYCFC
Yeah.
game, and I think
That's one
I
where
mean, it was
I think they did
incredible,
it
like-
wrong.
Really?
Not to
Yeah.
mention, apparently at Children's Mercy Park, whatever you want to call it. It's because at say at RFK, it's behind one of the end boards. There's nobody around. I mean, Jesus, dude! Like the VAR monitor at Children's, it's like in the stands, basically.
Yeah, they need to.
There's just going to be a
They
less
need to
goofy
have-
way to do this than holding up a computer
Right.
monitor. Like,
Well, also they need to have these monitors, and I understand this starts to become more expensive, but at least for something like the World Cup, they need to have these monitors everywhere. We can't have the referee jogging 70 yards across the field to the monitor.
or just
That-
use an iPad or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. Like,
With the Geiger incident, so for anyone who didn't see, and I only caught highlights of this match because it was on during the Oscars.
I was watching an NYCFC match during the Oscars.
There
That's the saddest point of my life.
I can't remember who was fouled, but there was a penalty call that Geiger made, and then there was a review. He took a look at it for a hot second, as you mentioned, and then reversed his call. And I thought he made the right call the first time, and I definitely do not think it was a clear and obvious error. So I don't think that play should have been.
There was also a red card that wasn't called that then went to VAR, which I thought there was no way it was a red card.
Was this the last man?
Yeah,
sequence?
no, maybe now I'm thinking about the LAFC, or am I thinking about the DC game?
No. It was one that
It was backing up with the elbow.
That
to
was the
face.
DC game. That was the DC
Okay.
Orlando game. And
Didn't think it was a red personally.
I thought that was a red.
That
just
was a red.
on the way pro has.
Anyways,
enforced that.
the thing about VAR is we could talk about this for like 2 hours.
Well, and that's the thing. To me, some people will say this is a bad thing. Yeah, there are people who say if you have VAR, it's going to remove debate and conversation about calls. Like, well, now we're just having different types of debates and conversations about.
I mean, what do
the
you think
same
about
calls.
like Leander, for example, on Twitter? He goes on a lot about how it ruins the flow of the game.
I think. Well, here's the thing: VAR isn't even used one time in the majority of games. That's actually like I got the numbers from MLS where they counted up the number of video reviews from introducing it last August through the playoffs, and it's only used like once every other game. Every now and then you have
Really?
a match where you
It
occasionally.
seems like it's used like multiple times a game.
Well, that's the thing. Occasionally you get a match where it's used like 3 times, and those are the ones where people go, "Oh, it's ruining the flow of the game." And they're kind of, in that case, sometimes they're right because they're still figuring out this process. But what you don't know this because it doesn't really come up is the vast majority of games it's not used once. So
another question from the audience. I hate to hold us up. I know we don't really have shit to talk about, but
No, this is what we have to talk about.
yeah. Hey guys, Robert Cordova. Hey guys, great to have you back. Thoughts on Jeff Cameron's article on Players
Thanks,
Tribune?
Robert.
Yeah, we have really missed a lot. We have, that this was like
Right.
3 months ago. Thoughts on that article though?
Well, basically, he goes nuclear on Arena.
Just no holds barred.
Just saying, basically,
the
that
words of like a 35-year-old person who knows that they may not have a role with the national team going forward.
May not. Yeah. He also said that Hillary should be in prison for Benghazi.
Exactly.
that's right. Yeah.
Actually, he didn't say that. I mean, he did say that probably before, but not in this article.
Right.
He went nuclear on Arena, saying
He was like,
that
lock him up, lock him up with Hillary and Arena in prison together. Like,
in one cell.
I'd watch that sitcom. I don't know.
Basically, he said that Arena is the reason why they didn't qualify.
He said he was confident they would have qualified if Klinsmann had stayed on.
I mean,
By the way, did you read the report today that Jonathan Klinsmann has, quote, a little too much American in
Yes,
him?
I
Yeah.
did see that.
Sorry. Anyways.
And that's from Hertha Berlin's coach.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
goalkeeper
Okay.
coach.
I love that he fully acknowledges like the stereotype about Germans.
Right.
He was like, he does not have enough of the serious working ethic of a German. Like,
I bet they must have said that like particularly just to piss off Jurgen.
Completely.
That's
God.
that's like the worst thing you could possibly hear about his kid, like that he's not embracing the German efficiency style of soccer training and
I just
life.
imagine Jurgen getting that message in the earpiece while flying his helicopter or something like that.
Just
They said what? You
like immediately like taking a detour,
crash
like,
landing.
no.
Yeah. Anyways,
Well, it's hard to know with Cameron. First of all, I do give him credit for speaking out. I think it's very interesting to hear a player's heartfelt opinion on a really delicate situation like this, and for a long time we mostly hear like cookie cutter boilerplate kind of quotes, and of course the uniqueness of this situation where Cameron knows his national team career is pretty much over has contributed,
especially now
the,
that the League of Nations is so far
yeah
out.
Right. I mean, has contributed to the atmosphere, but it's hard to separate Cameron's critique of Arena's tactics and personnel decisions from his own personal interests, because those tactics and personnel decisions involved leaving him out.
I also thought it was interesting to watch. Jeff Cameron did not exactly cover himself in glory in the games leading up to.
And he does admit, that like in the Costa Rica game, particularly at Red Bull Arena, like he had a shocker. But I think most U.S. national team observers would tell you that that was an anomaly, and that he was still, after that game, their best center back option, and what happened in Trinidad with Omar Gonzalez's incredible own goal would justify that.
Thank you very much to Neil. It is what it is. Cannot change it anymore.
Anyways,
I will say, I think from the tactics standpoint and from Cameron's description of relationship or lack thereof with Arena, that it sounds like he was very much in the right on those issues. Like, Cameron he got benched because he made a horrible pass that led directly to a goal in a match the U.S. was already losing in like the 87th minute against Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And then didn't start another game after that.
Right.
And that seems like a bizarrely harsh punishment. And then to call him in when he just went 90 minutes for his club team and then tell him face to face, we're sitting you because we feel like you're not fit, again, feels like a communication problem. Just leave Cameron out if you don't intend on playing him. So it felt like something was amiss there. Would Klinsmann have gotten the U.S. to the World Cup? That's where I think maybe Cameron's maybe getting carried away.
Using his personal animus against Bruce Arena to take it to the next level.
Right. I do not think Klinsmann would have gotten the U.S. to the World Cup.
Anyways, let's talk about some general MLS
Hold
stuff.
on, we got a good question here from Antonio on Twitter. It's an interesting one.
Hopefully it's something that happened 6 months ago, because
no, this one is actually forward thinking. So Thank you, Antonio. Hot take question: who has more tap-in goals this MLS season?
Gyasi Zardes.
No.
I'm gonna actually.
Did you see it?
I did not see the
I was talking to
question,
Matt
but-
Doyle about this, and I was like this. I made a cheap Gyasi Zardes first touch joke.
Right.
Like he has the first touch of a tunnel boring machine or something, and Doyle was like, "No, dude, you don't understand this. Like, Berhalter has found a way to like weaponize his first touch. Like, you just get his first touch like literally inches from the goal mouth, and it goes into the goal."
Dude, he had a first touch, and I can't remember if it was the Galaxy or the U.S.
Have we talked about the first Seth? On the way home from the last DC United game last year, Seth showed me something in the car I had never seen before, which is the Gyasi Zardes first touch
You
compilation.
haven't seen that?
No, set to like dubstep music
Exactly.
and like with interspersed clips of him just being like, "These are soccer fundamentals," and then like
No, it starts out with him saying to the camera, "First touch is everything." And as much as I think it's a little harsh to make fun of a national team player for his touch, when you record a video saying that, At that point, it's pretty much
Yeah,
fair
like
game.
you don't see me recording like weight loss instructional videos or something. You're just like asking for it.
I
like-
know, I know.
No, I was just gonna say, like, there was one time, and like I was saying, I can't remember if it was US or Galaxy, where he had a case where I swear to God, he just had a horrific first touch that just blasted into the back of the net. Like, he wasn't trying to shoot, but he just had a horrible first touch that went in. And that is it seems like the crew have built a system around using that.
Yeah. Okay, so the question from Antonio was who has more tap-in goals this season, Ola Kamara or Zardes? I want to expand that and just say who has more goals this season, Giassi Zardes or Kamara.
I think it's going to be Kamara. I'm high on the Galaxy in general, though. I feel like the crew. I mean, that was an impressive way to start the season, but I feel like at some point they might come down to earth.
Did anybody else watch the Galaxy game? And like I know it was sort of like a typically sloppy, haphazard early season MLS game, but did anybody else watch that game and just think like, okay, the Galaxy are back? Because like you watched them last year and just be like, oh god, this is like
Right.
They're like a mainstay. You expect them to qualify the playoffs, be in the go make a deep run. I mean, I feel like I went to like 8 MLS Cups in a row there, even though it was probably just 2, but I watched that game and thought like, okay, all right, so this is like back to normal with them, you know.
By the way, I just tweeted out the Giassi Zardes first touch compilation video.
Nicely done.
In case anybody hadn't seen it.
I
or
can't believe I actually told Seth was like, you've seen this, right? I was like, no. He was like, I yet to see it immediately. Like right now we're gonna watch it,
Yeah, and Pablo was driving and I was a little scared we were gonna crash.
Last time Seth and I watched a video in my car, it was a
okay. This
I've never admitted this on. I don't think I've ever admitted this on air.
This is an amazing story.
We were driving in my Corvette, actually right by Washington Hospital Center, and we were driving to a DC United game, and I had a stream on, just sort of like in the center console. I was like listening to it and like glancing at it of the NYCFC game, and there was like somebody made a really somebody got stuck in on Tommy McNamara.
I was about to say, is this going to involve Tommy Mac?
Yeah, like studs up tackle on Tommy Mac, no call, something like that. And I glanced at the screen to look at the replay, and I just screamed at Seth about it, like, what the fuck is this? And then I looked up, and I was just barreling towards the back of a Toyota Camry. So I slammed on my brakes, and I smashed into this car.
What? I didn't know about this.
I smashed into this Toyota Camry in my Corvette. So then the situation only gets stranger. I get out of my car to make sure that the person's okay, right?
Is this incriminating right now? Like,
No.
Okay.
I get out and I walk up, and the driver of the car
was also watching.
Is a 14-year-old girl.
What?
With no learner's permit, nothing.
What?
Just like with one of her friends in the car, right? Like,
oh,
I know, dude. And a child in the fucking back seat. Right.
What?
Everybody would. To be clear, everybody was fine.
Wait, why did that? Did you find out why that was happening? Why was there a child in the back
because
seat?
I was just so like overcome.
Did you call Child Protective Services?
With no, because I was so overcome with relief that I didn't.
That Tommy McNamara was okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Thomas McNamara caused me to smash into the back of a Toyota Camry, nearly kill a child and a 14-year-old girl. If I had a nickel for every time that happened, And then we proceeded to drive to RFK Stadium.
Yeah, we went to the United games.
With
your car was fine?
Most definitely not. The whole car is made out of fiberglass. I mean, the car was like in 18 pieces. We just sort of like hobbled it to the stadium, and so that happened. Anyways,
oh God,
what were we talking about?
Yeah, we were at that point. At that moment, we were like, we need to just kind of keep this between us because
before
luckily nobody listens to this podcast, so just nobody will know.
Oh my God!
But it was like Seth's response was the appropriate one, which is like you give your friend 2 to 3 minutes of respectful like, are you okay? Man, this is crazy. And then you just like laugh at them hysterically and give them shit for smashing into a teenage girl because you're concerned about Thomas McNamara's health.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I hope Tommy. I hope that story somehow makes its way to Tommy
McNamara,
and like
he
knows
is liable. I will sue Tommy McNamara.
Well, I just think it's more like he knows what a big fan he has in you.
I think he already knows.
I was
that.
about to say.
Yeah.
I've tagged him many times. I did a sort of like a feature story for MLS and how he's like a cult hero. I think he knows.
Okay. Atlanta and Toronto lose. Any reason to be alarmed for either of those teams? I can think of maybe one of those teams that had a little more to be concerned about.
Who are we concerned about here? Probably not Toronto.
Toronto's fine. They're playing CCL. Their focus is splintered. Drew Moore was held out. They played a solid crew team that managed the game well.
Let's reshape this question. Like, is anybody here concerned that like the Atlanta bubble is about to burst?
I think I picked them to win MLS Cup, so I hope not.
Did they like maybe buy into their own hype a little bit too much?
Yeah, I think it was more of a reality check. I don't think the bubble is burst, but I think if they don't make changes, it will be. But I also think Tata Martino and Darren Eales and the people there are smart enough to make changes. Namely, they need a defensive midfielder. They need a replacement for Carlos Carmona.
Tata will resign, is what you're saying.
They need no more Jeff Loranowitz at center back.
I really just think Jay Heaps could do a better job than me.
I feel like he fielded a tactically naive team, and if they're going to have success going forward, they need to avoid that. I was more alarmed than about anything else. Leandro Gonzalez-Perez was just bad.
Yeah.
And bad on an individual level in a way that tactics won't fix. And he's a guy who was incredible for them last year and needs to be a big-time presence in the back, needs to be reliable, especially now that Michael Parkhurst is a year older, and at some point he's going to kind of turn the corner at his age, and they can't afford performances like that out of Gonzalez-Perez. But from a tactical standpoint, pick a little different lineup, get another defensive midfielder in there, maybe sign a new defensive midfielder, but I still think this team has too much talent and too much firepower in the attack to really be concerned.
Another player I would be concerned about if I were an Atlanta fan, Darlington Nagbe.
Right.
I'm not
the most enigmatic player in American soccer. Excuse me.
Completely. I mean, it's just one game, but he was awful, and I'm not sure where he fits. They need a little more solidity in center midfield. There's no doubt about it. He is not that guy. He's been playing out wide for a while. He's not going to play out wide on this team with all the options that they have. So I don't know. I mean, if they find a system where they can get him in the middle with at least one more solid defensive presence, I think maybe he'll be okay. But the way it looked this weekend, I don't know. I don't know where he fits.
Yeah, I was a little concerned when I saw they were playing him in that kind of box-to-box role. And I will say, when Timbers won the MLS Cup, that was more or less the role he played. He had Diego Chara as a lone defensive midfielder behind him and Diego Valeri in front of him. So this is a similar system. You have Almiron in front of you and a defensive midfielder behind him. The issue is that defensive midfielder can't be Chris McCann. I'm not even sure it can be Jeff Loranowitz, who had a resurgent season last year, but again is getting up there in years, isn't overly mobile. You need a top-notch defensive midfielder behind him if you're going to play that system.
Right.
I want to do some real quick.
Okay.
Can we first of all talk about the fact that the Rochester Rhinos apparently don't even exist anymore?
They're on hiatus.
Okay. All right.
They're going to come back in the USL D3 in a year.
No, she just said she needed a couple of weeks to
break.
spend some time alone and all right.
We're just on a break.
Let's do an easy one.
Okay.
6 Degrees of Rochester Rhinos, a former American soccer club, Dane Richards.
Dane Richards. He played with the New York Rebels I think he played with Johnny Steele, but if not, he.
I think doesn't count anymore.
I'll say
We're harder on you this year,
Dan
dude.
Richards definitely played with Thierry Henry, who played with Johnny Steele.
Who?
Played for the Rochester Rhinos.
Okay, all right. You know, my friend Sam and I used to play 6 Degrees of like Kevin Bacon a lot.
You gotta do the sound.
Who's that?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There you go.
We recently reshaped this game to be 6 Degrees of Bill Paxton.
Oh, I would struggle because even I mix him up with Bill Pullman.
Really? I don't understood that.
It's just a weakness, yeah.
Anyways, moving on. Yeah, well handled, I guess. You know.
Thank you.
Should we spend the last 5 minutes or so getting into Thomas's Oscar thoughts?
We don't. It doesn't need it. We could be here all night, guys. It doesn't have to be an hour show, you know.
Thomas, you were a little miffed, I think, at The Shape of Water winning over Get Out. Would you like to expand on that?
Okay, well, first off, I think Shape of Water is a fine Best Picture winner.
Yeah.
I think it won because it bridged the gap between these two facets of the Academy. There's the older, more traditional members who appreciated that Shape of Water was this kind of old school fantasy.
Another win for the entitled, half human, half water lobby.
The fish
Oh, we have
fucker
a
lobby.
Oh, look at that! Didn't even hear that. Let's see.
Someone want to just break up the Oscar thoughts.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I was getting on the roll.
All right, 248. You're an open wide for some soccer.
How
Hi,
can I
how's
help
it
you?
going, guys?
Good,
I'm
man.
caller, big fan.
All right. What can we do for you?
I heard you guys were talking about Atlanta United. I wanted to know what you guys thought about Carlton not getting on the field and Kimi Weah, who played on the opposite wing at the U17 World Cup, making his debut for PSG. What does that mean about a young American player in MLS?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an interesting pair of events to happen on the same weekend. You know, the thing about Weah that I would caution is that PSG had a lot of injuries. They had a game coming up in a couple days against Real Madrid. They were going to rest guys regardless. So I mean, it's great to see him make a first team debut.
Damn near scored too.
Almost scored. It was great to see, and obviously shows that he's making good progress there. At the same time, I wouldn't expect to see him on the field for them again, like
For a long while.
yeah. I mean, maybe once or twice before the end of the season. Who knows? But certainly, at the same time, having Carlton not see the field was extremely frustrating because he made the 18. You know, if you're not going to put him on the match day roster, that's fair enough. Maybe you don't think he's ready. Maybe that's not the right situation. But if you have him travel, if you have him on the bench, and you're down 4-0 for most of the second half, and you can't get him 20 minutes, 15 minutes at least, I mean, why is he on the match day squad?
Yeah, definitely. I really think he has that quality on the wing or through the middle to really be a dynamic presence, even at 17. So it's kind of disappointing not to see him on the field.
Yeah, he does seem to have that little bit of Clint Dempsey try shit in him, which is awesome. And yeah, hopefully we see him on the field at some point soon.
All right, man. I appreciate the call. Thanks for calling in.
Appreciate it.
Don't look at me.
Did you want the rest of my Oscars?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell us more about Aquaman or whatever it was that won.
So I was saying the Oscars, it was interesting because Shape of Water, it's actually this very much an ode to old school Hollywood. If you haven't seen it, there's an old school musical theater sequence in it, and the main character lives above like a vintage movie theater that they filmed at an actual theater in Toronto apparently. And so there's enough there that it wasn't a completely ridiculous choice for the older, more traditional Academy members. And then it has the more progressive messages about, embracing outsiders and, anti-government themes and these various things that are appealing to the younger members of the Academy that have been increased in recent years as they've tried to make the Academy more useful and diverse and such. So I do think that is why it won over what I think should have won, which was Get Out, which I think was just a pretty much a perfectly written screenplay and the movie that people will be talking about 5-10 years from now as the film that best captured the mood of the moment back in 2017.
Overall, I thought there was some good stuff.
Well said, Ben.
I think that probably the Academy was like, okay, we nominated Get Out for a bunch of stuff. Nobody thought that we would even do that. So like
he did. Jordan Peele did win
And
original screenplay.
that was the one that he had to win. That was one they had to win. Like you knew that he wasn't going to win for Best Actor, the guy.
I still haven't seen it.
Oh really?
So, yeah, I
Oh,
know.
Oh man.
Claire and I were talking about the other night. I got to see it.
Yeah, I mean it is really great, and you.
I mean, I just
you do
terrible
have
at movies. Like I've seen Rocky IV 3 times the past 2 years.
So you're very
And I haven't
excited
seen
for
Get Out.
Creed 2.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? You're
I
telling
mean,
me there's a Drago tie-in here? I mean, Jesus Christ, dude! Like, no.
Oh.
I'm a sucker for like any movie gimmick, right? Like that's why I like the newer Star Wars films. I'm just like, all it takes for me to be entertained is like, that's Han Solo. Like that's it. You know, like he could be farting, and I'd be like, but it's Han Solo farting. It's Harrison Ford. You know, like.
Are you gonna see the Han Solo movie that doesn't have Harrison Ford?
Yeah, probably still.
I hope it'll be good.
As long as he farts. Anyways.
I heard there's a scene there with him farting.
What?
No, I made that up.
Oh. Guys, I had I'll share a quick anecdote I picked up at DC United training today. Somebody
was Ben happy to see you? I haven't gotten a report on this.
Haven't gotten a
first
chance
appearance in a while.
Haven't gotten a chance to touch base with Ben yet.
Okay.
Looking forward to seeing the look on his face when he sees me back for year 6 of DC United coverage, whatever the fuck it is. So United played a game in Las Vegas, their final preseason game, and the Las Vegas Knights FC? SC is it FC? Lights?
Wait,
Yeah.
I mixed
The
up.
Knights is the hockey team.
I was about to
Las
say,
Vegas
yeah.
Lights. Sorry. They're sponsored by Zappos, right?
The lighter.
No, that's
No.
Zippo.
Zippo.
God, we're all fucked up here.
Zappos a shoe
Zappos
thing?
is exactly. It's
Yeah.
like an online shoe site, and this online shoe site has a mascot, which is a llama, right?
Naturally.
I don't know if you guys caught the photo of like the starting 11 for Las Vegas.
I did see
Lights,
this.
yeah. It's like the like 9 dudes, or like it's like 11 dudes and 2 llamas in the middle, and somebody was there. Somebody was there with United. Told me that during that photo, there's like a Mexican player of note that plays for Las Vegas, former national teamer.
Yeah. Huiki.
Something, I don't know.
Yeah,
Something
the
like that. Yeah.
defender.
Like, so they take the
Huiki, I
photo
think.
or whatever, and like all of a sudden this llama goes ape shit. One of the llamas goes ape shit and starts like stomping backwards at this former Mexican national teamer who just barely jumps out of the way of this like rabid Zappos llama. Yeah.
Oh man.
He was like, the person who was telling me was just like, man, I've never seen anything like this shit. Like the team is crazy. The fans, there were like 10,000 people there. We're crazy.
Do they still have
they
Freddie
also-
Adu?
They do have Freddie. He played like
Did
20 minutes.
Did they actually sign him?
I don't know.
I thought he
I
was
know
like
he was trialing with
yeah,
them
he
or
was like a
something.
trialist.
They also have the jerseys where they put a smiley face emoji on
Yeah.
the
Did you see
underside
that?
of
Yeah,
the jersey.
yeah.
It's
So you
kinda
pull it
brilliant.
up over your
And
face.
they have a promo where this is a true story. If any player scores 3 goals in a match, they get $300 in chips to like some local casino.
Oh, snap.
And like I
pretty
struggle with like the legalities of that, or like what if one of these guys has a gambling addiction? It just seems like a bad idea, but
Also, can you?
and their coach is Chili's.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
like on silent smoking heaters all game long.
Man, did you see that promo of just him smoking a cigarette? I'm gonna post
Did
this
not.
on our Twitter account. It's the funniest shit I've ever seen in my entire life. Anyways,
Okay. Should we wrap up or should we get
let's
Thomas's?
talk about CCL. Let's talk about CCL,
Oh, this is CCL.
which is going on right now. What's going on with
I don't
it?
know,
With the
yeah,
game
what's
right
It's
now?
0-0 at halftime between
Okay.
Toronto and Tigres.
In my notes, I have, is this the year for MLS? No, it is not.
I didn't catch the game last night, but I saw I went to bed early, like at 9:30 or something. I woke up, saw the fact that Red Bulls had won 2-0 at Tijuana. Was shocked. Watched the highlights. Looks like Robles just stood on his head. A couple goals from BWP. Still an impressive win. I mean, just based on the condensed highlights I saw. I mean, seems like the Red Bulls were outmatched, but took advantage of a couple of mistakes that MLS sides typically don't when they're playing Mexican teams.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if the Red Bulls end up being the big MLS contender for CCL. Not for any rational or logical reason. Actually, for the opposite, because in CCL, your MLS form just doesn't seem to matter. Like the closest team we've seen to winning CCL, I guess, most recently was Montreal, and they were kind of a mess. And they, were coming off a season when they were terrible. They ended up making the playoffs that year, but it was largely because they signed Didier Drogba, which was much later in the season. He was no factor in CCL. So, if Toronto crashed out against Tigres and the Sounders crashed out, I'd look at that and go, okay, yeah, that's the way the script goes. But then if the Red Bulls pulled off an upset or two, I'd say, yeah, it's CCL. Anything can happen. Logic and tactics and actually trying to break down the matchups doesn't really matter.
One of my Twitter followers today was like really disappointed at the Tijuana fans for throwing beverages at Red Bulls players as they left the field, and I was like, beverages? This is like a step up. I mean,
right?
Like, be happy they're not getting bags of urine thrown at them. Like, apparently we're making progress.
Yeah,
that's just par for the course in CCL.
Do you bring a bag and think, all right, if the occasion calls for it, I have this to piss
or exactly. Well, or different question. I mean, maybe you piss in the bag. Maybe you bring in the bag full of urine.
Right.
Yeah. I would just probably urinate over the railing.
Right.
Why the bag?
Save yourself the trouble.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm more of an organic.
Yeah.
Sort of.
That is very environmentally friendly.
Exactly. Why waste a bag? I'm going to put this down and tweet this Chalice video out.
Okay. With the, I don't know, can an MLS team win? Maybe. I still think the format, even though it's been adjusted to make it a teeny bit more feasible for MLS teams, still is pretty tough. It's hard to expect an MLS team that is, just a couple weeks out of preseason, that is saving cap room for mid-season signings that haven't happened yet, to compete with Liga MX teams that are, a couple months into their season playing full tilt. And that's, I feel like until CCL's, semifinals, final are played in the fall, then you're never going to see MLS teams win on a regular basis. Although we could see an outlier, and maybe a team like the Red Bulls could go on the run this year and win it.
Do y'all want to, speaking of which, do y'all just want to turn this off and try and catch 30 minutes of the CCL game?
Who's got Go90?
Does anybody have a Go90 app that actually works?
I do on my phone.
I'm looking at you, NWSL fan.
We'll get this done.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you. Hopefully,
see you in 4 months.
Not 4 months. Bye.
Get back, let me